The Starlight Echoes Chapter 6 The Great Dairy Mystery. The neon sign for Mean Bean hummed with a steady electric buzz, casting a warm red and blue glow over the rain-slicked pavement of the Green Hills main street. Inside, the diner was a sanctuary of chrome, checkered tiles, and the comforting sizzle of a flat-top grill. Shadow pushed the heavy glass door open, his ears twitching at the sudden bell chime. He didn't scan the room for snipers this time. He was too busy watching a waitress carry a tray of tall, frosted glasses topped with massive clouds of whipped cream.
All right, take a seat, boys,
Tom said, sliding into a corner booth. Maddie slid in next to him while Sonic, Shadow, and Knuckles squeezed into the opposite side. Shadow stared at the menu, but his eyes kept drifting back to the table next to them. A small child was currently struggling to pull a thick pink liquid through a straw.
Sonic,
Shadow said, his voice dropping into a tone of quiet, intense observation.
explain the physics of the milkshake. It appears to be a structural anomaly. Too solid to be a beverage, yet too fluid to be a solid. Is it a sentient dairy formation?
Sonic nearly choked on his water, leaning back with a snort of laughter.
A sentient? No, Shadow! It's just ice cream blended with milk until it's basically a dessert you can drink. It's a miracle of modern science.
It is a test of lung capacity.
Knuckles declared, pointing a gloved finger at the straw.
To draw the frozen nectar from the depths requires the breath of a mountain warrior.
Maddie smiled, leaning over the table.
Why don't you just try one, Shadow? I think you'd like the vanilla. It's simple, like the stars.
Shadow considered this. He watched the waitress approach, and when she asked for their order, he looked her straight in the eye with a look of pure, unblinking determination.
I require the sentient dairy, vanilla flavor, and a straw of sufficient durability.
The waitress blinked, looked at Tom, who just gave a don't ask shrug, and nodded.
One vanilla shake. Coming right up.
When the glass finally arrived, it was a towering monument of frozen ivory. A single bright red cherry sat atop a mountain of whipped cream. Shadow didn't dive in. He circled the glass like a scientist examining a new life form. He picked up the straw, examining the hollow tube.
The vacuum pressure required.
Shadow murmured. He took a breath, leaned in, and gave the straw a sharp, experimental tug. Nothing happened. Shadow frowned. He tried again, his cheeks hollowing out as he applied more force. Suddenly, a massive, freezing glob of vanilla hit the back of his throat. His eyes went wide. His pupils dilated. A visible shiver ran down his spine, starting at his ears and ending at the tip of his tail. He let out a soft, surprised MRRP sound that he definitely didn't mean to make.
Brain freeze!
Sonic yelled, cackling as he pointed at Shadow's stunned expression.
Hold your tongue to the roof of your mouth! Quick!
Shadow did as he was told, leaning back in the booth with his eyes squeezed shut. After a few seconds, the icy sting faded, replaced by the lingering, creamy sweetness of the vanilla. He opened his eyes, and instead of being annoyed, he looked at the glass with a look of profound respect.
It is an ambush.
Shadow said, his voice light and filled with genuine wonder.
A cold, delicious ambush.
He took another sip, more carefully this time, letting the flavor settle. A small, relaxed smile spread across his face. He reached up and plucked the cherry from the top, popping it into his mouth.
I have decided.
Shadow announced to the table, his tone no longer robotic but warm and full of life.
This is the most logical form of milk. I shall accept no other.
Spoken like a true Wachowski.
Maddie laughed, reaching over to wipe a tiny dot of whipped cream off the tip of Shadow's nose. Shadow didn't pull away. He just took another sip of his shake, listening to the rain hit the diner windows and the sound of his brothers arguing over who got the last fry. For the ultimate life form, life was finally starting to taste a whole lot like vanilla. The diner was warm, smelling of toasted buns and grease, a sharp contrast to the rain drumming against the large glass windows. Shadow took another careful pull of the vanilla milkshake, his expression one of deep, serene focus.
Okay, the shake is a win.
Sonic said, leaning over his own empty glass.
But now, Shadow, we reached the summit, the Everest of culinary achievement. The reason I have legs to run and a heart to beat.
He signaled to the waitress with a dramatic flair.
Marge, bring out the heavy artillery. 2 chili dogs, extra onions, 1 for the rookie, 1 for the champ.
Shadow lowered his straw, his crimson eyes tracking the waitress as she disappeared into the kitchen.
Chili. Dogs.
He repeated.
I am familiar with the dog component, thanks to Ozzy. I assume this does not involve the consumption of a golden retriever.
Gross. No!
Sonic recoiled, waving his hands.
It's a hot dog, in a bun, smothered in meat sauce and cheese. It's a flavor explosion, Shadow. It's the fuel of heroes.
Knuckles nodded solemnly from the corner of the booth.
The spice of the chili is like the heat of battle, Shadow. It tests the fortitude of the stomach. Only the strong can endure the onion breath that follows.
A few minutes later, 2 steaming plates were slid onto the table. Shadow stared at the mountain of brown sauce, melted cheddar and diced onions. It looked chaotic. It looked messy. It looked entirely illogical.
There's a technique to it.
Sonic explained, picking his up with practiced ease.
You gotta hinge the jaw, tilt the head, and embrace the mess. If it doesn't get on your gloves, you aren't doing it right.
Shadow looked at his pristine white gloves, then back at the chili dog. He didn't hesitate. He picked it up, feeling the warmth through the fabric. He didn't analyze the spice levels or the nutritional density. He just took a massive committed bite. The table went silent. Tom and Maddie leaned in, watching for the reaction. Shadow chewed slowly. His eyes narrowed, then widened, then narrowed again. A small bead of chili sauce landed right on his white chest fur, but he didn't even flinch. He swallowed, let out a slow, hot breath, and looked at Sonic with a gaze that could only be described as enlightened.
It is aggressive.
Shadow said, his voice lower and thick with appreciation.
The spice provides a tactical sting, while the cheese offers a necessary structural dampening.
He took another, even larger bite.
I understand now, Hedgehog. I understand why you run.
He's one of us.
Sonic cheered, slamming his hand on the table.
He's officially a chili dog disciple.
Maddie laughed, reaching across the table with a napkin to dab at the sauce on Shadow's fur.
I think we're going to need a lot more laundry detergent with you in the house, Shadow.
Shadow didn't pull away from the napkin. He just kept eating, his tail giving a tiny rhythmic thump against the vinyl seat of the booth. He wasn't thinking about the gun base or the dark meteor or the weight of 50 years. He was just a boy at a diner, enjoying a messy meal with his family while the rain turned the world outside into a distant, blurry memory. As the last of the chili sauce was cleared away, Shadow's attention drifted to the corner of the diner. Nestled between 2 high-backed booths was a machine of polished chrome and bubbling neon tubes, glowing with an inviting rhythmic pulse.
That's a jukebox, Shadow.
Tom said, noticing the dark hedgehog's intense stare.
It's like a library, but only for songs. You put in a quarter, and the machine tells a story for everyone to hear.
Tun handed Shadow a quarter and then Shadow slid out of the vinyl booth, his movements fluid and no longer stiff with the tension of a soldier. He walked toward the machine, his crimson eyes reflecting the swirling blues and purples of the neon.
You gotta pick something with a kick.
Sonic called out from the table, swinging his legs.
Something fast. Something that sounds like a double shot of espresso.
Shadow didn't look at the pop or country sections. His eyes were drawn to a darker label near the bottom. He pressed a series of buttons, his gloved finger hovering for a second before committing. The machine whirred. A mechanical arm swung out, delicate and precise, placing a black disc onto the turntable. After a moment of static crackle, a haunting, melancholic piano melody began to fill the diner. Then a powerful, soaring female voice cut through the air, draped in heavy, distorted guitars. It was Lithium by Evanescence. Shadow stood perfectly still in front of the jukebox. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. The raw, emotional weight of the song, the struggle between the darkness and the desire to feel something real, hit him with the force of a sonic boom. It wasn't just music. It was a frequency he recognized. It was the sound of a heart that had been frozen for 50 years finally beginning to thaw.
Whoa, Shadow.
Sonic whispered from the booth, his ears pinning back slightly at the intensity of the track.
That's That's a choice. A really, really heavy choice.
Shadow didn't look back. He leaned one hand against the cool chrome of the jukebox. His head bowed slightly as the chorus swelled. He didn't know yet that this band would become the soundtrack to his life, the music he would play in the attic when the rain was too loud or the memories too sharp. He just knew that for the first time a human voice was singing exactly how he felt, and Shadow felt a ghost of a shiver run down his quills. It wasn't a dictionary moment. It was a soul moment. When the song finally faded into the hum of the diner, Shadow stayed there for a long beat of silence. He turned back to the family, his expression open, vulnerable, and profoundly moved.
I wish to acquire more of this.
Shadow said, his voice steady but filled with a new kind of passion.
The singer, she understands the weight of the stars.
We can get you a music player for the attic, Shadow.
Maddie said softly, her heart aching at the look of pure connection on his face.
You can listen to her whenever you want.
Shadow nodded, a small grateful smile touching his lips. He followed them out into the rainy night, the melody still ringing in his ears, a dark and beautiful light to guide him home. The rain continued to lash against the roof of the truck as Tom pulled out of the diner parking lot, but inside the cab the mood was electric. Shadow was still staring out the window, the haunting melody of Lithium playing on a loop in his mind. Sonic leaned over the back of the seat, his green eyes bright with a new kind of respect.
Okay, I gotta hand it to you, Shadow. That was a deep cut. Like, seriously deep.
Shadow turned his head away from the glass, his expression thoughtful.
The song, it did not sound like the cheerful melodies you usually prefer, Hedgehog. It felt heavy, like the atmosphere of a planet with too much gravity.
That's exactly why it was cool.
Sonic exclaimed, punctuating his words with a quick jab in the air.
I mean, I love a good hit-the-road anthem, but that singer, Amy Lee, she's got pipes, man. It's like she's singing straight out of a storm. It's moody. It's intense. It's totally you.
Shadow looked down at his gloved hands, flexed them once, and then looked back at Sonic.
She spoke of staying in love with my sorrow. I have spent 50 years defined by a single moment of grief. I thought that meant I was broken. But hearing it in a song with that much power behind it, it made the sorrow feel like something I could carry, rather than something that carries me.
Sonic's ears softened, his usual wisecracking demeanor dropping for a moment of genuine connection.
That's the magic of a good track, Shadow. It makes you feel like you aren't the only one standing in the rain. You've got great taste. Seriously, you picked the one song in that entire machine that actually had a soul.
I completely agree.
Knuckles chimed in from the other side, his arms crossed over his chest.
The lady at the music box sings with the conviction of a poet warrior. Though I did not understand the lithium reference, is it a rare ore from the stars?
Shadow gave a small light chuckle, not a dry clinical sound but a warm one.
I believe in this context, Knuckles, it is a metaphor for a numbing peace, but I prefer the music. It makes the silence of the night feel less empty.
Well, welcome to the world of being a music snob.
Sonic joked, bumping Shadow's shoulder.
Tomorrow, we're getting you some headphones. And maybe some black posters. If we're going full emo, we're doing it right.
Shadow didn't protest the label. He just leaned his head back against the seat, a small satisfied smirk on his face. He liked the idea of having a taste. He liked the idea that there was a whole world of voices out there waiting to tell him he wasn't alone. As the truck turned onto the winding road leading back to the house, the ultimate life form wasn't thinking about his origins. He was just a teenager who had found his favorite band, sitting next to a brother who finally understood his vibe.